Okay, folks, I have 7 o'clock. We're gonna call the meeting to order if I could, please. Welcome everybody to the Town of Pelham October Planning Commission meeting. If I could have a roll call to my left, please.
Cheryl Whitney,
Brad Valentine.
Tim Pritchard.
Kyle Eckler.
Jenny Sisson, Carol Hannah.
Andrew Holloway.
Thank you, folks. We're all present. If I could ask the board to review the minutes from the September meeting. Motion to approve.
I'll
Board
make,
additions.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Brad. I have a second.
Second.
So moved. All in favor of the minutes as submitted, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, those opposed. Okay. There's no old business. You don't have anything?
Nope.
New business, we did have a petition from DR Horton Homes and Franklin Urbans. This is property out to the west by Bain Welker. That's been postponed till November. They didn't get their public notifications in the mail in a timely manner, so that will be on the November agenda.
So was it noticed for November?
It will be. It
Okay.
hasn't been noticed at all.
Oh, okay.
So they filed all of their materials in time for the October meeting, so that's why it was assigned that number,
Okay.
but they wanted more time to notice.
All right. Item B is review and vote on possible amendments to the UDO.
All right. Your
As-
favorite
As we
thing.
do every meeting.
So I wasn't at the last meeting, but Denise had kind of relayed to me some of the stuff that you guys had talked about and then the amendments that you did agree to. So I can just start with the first one that we have on the list. This is actually for the last two. So if you just want to leave it up there, you can. But the Excel sheet that you have in there for the October amendments is what I'm going off of here. So last time we had changed some eve requirements in general business, institutional, things like that, from 3 feet to eliminating those, and the MF2 was one that was left on there. Was there any discussion with that on moving it to 12 inches like everything else that's residential, or removing it completely? I figured we would just leave it at 12 or put it in the 12-inch category, because that's what all of our residential areas are.
I guess leave it at 12, but there's a lot of commercial buildings that don't have it.
So this
They
would,
would probably want to petition us.
this is a residential.
It's just commercial too.
That's not. Sorry, yeah, we're looking at this Excel sheet. That's for the last two amendments.
I'm sorry.
So it's for the MF2 medium to high density multifamily zoning. So it's a residential space. MF1 requires 12-inch eaves. So I guess the choices are move it to 12 or leave it at 3 or just eliminate the need for it on MF2.
What's the difference between MF1 and 2?
Low density, kind of more ranch style.
On
And then
MF1?
F is MF1 and then MF2 is more of your either townhomes or multiplex buildings that are apartments.
I still think you want to overhang.
I would think so
Yeah.
too.
12.
Make it 12.
Yeah,
I got 12
because
across the
it,
board.
even though it's the commercial use, I guess you could say, it's residential. so-
Residential look.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll move that. Well, Denise also said that there were, it was kind of brought up that we have a really big jump in between our zoning and SF1 zoning. So it goes from 5 acres requirement for RR and then goes all the way down to 0.5 for SF1. So I didn't know if you guys had discussed maybe having something a little lower for residential or rural residential. So you could have something as small as 1 or 2 acres instead of that 5 acres. So there's a little something kind of in between there for a residential style zoning. So if you look at that there, amendment, the Madison County Waterworks or whoever, I guess maybe the engineer deals with that. When you drill a well, you have to have at least a 2-acre lot. So I figured that might kind of be a good correlation. And then I have some other comparisons on there for like Furtville, Fishers, Hancock County, and they have if sewer is or is not available. So we could do something
I
similar.
think
to
Madison
that.
County is 2 acres on septic, 1 acre on sewer.
Oh, is that what it is?
Something like that.
Gotcha. And I wonder if it's the water well component. It's-
I mean, there's just requirements for separation on water wells, so I couldn't see there being an acreage minimum.
Separation is normally 50 feet between the septic field and the water well.
Well, yeah.
You know, even a quarter or a third of an acre, there's more than sufficient space for a ranch home, a well, and a septic. I mean,
The thought with the 2 acres though is if your system fails, you've got room to replace it.
Mhm.
They were really tightened up on septic.
One, you need, the systems are gigantic,
Yeah.
big, so
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't go any lower than 2 acres on septic.
I agree.
I don't know what the thoughts are, or you want to differentiate, or just move it to 2, or any
Because
thought?
our SF1 is, the minimum is half an acre. It's 21,180 square feet. So,
Comments?
I think the thought was a 5 acre lot, if somebody builds on a 5 acre lot, most of it grows up in weeds. If they don't take care of it. So if you could allow somebody to do a 2 acre lot, it's
Mhm.
actually,
it's more manageable.
yeah, it ends up looking better because you don't have all that waste.
well, and I agree too.
And you're
that-
still limited to 3 lots with a minor subdivision, so.
And then also there's, if someone were to want to, have an exempt subdivision where they're parceling off a piece or, a relative or just a house to be built on farmland, instead of going through the entire process to like rezone it or something like that for the proper acreage. I think 2 is a pretty popular number.
But if it's a big farm field, it's not gonna be RR. You would have to reduce
That's
A1 and A2 down to something smaller.
I think 2 sounds
vote 2.
fine.
For rural,
I think-
for RR.
Vote
Yeah.
two.
Yeah, 2,
Now,
2.
okay, we'll do 2 acres. Is that with and without sewer or for both?
Yeah.
Let's leave it 2.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I can do that. Something
Oh.
that,
One other
Sure,
thought on it. We don't have any length to depth ratio limits. So
there's a lot
what's the,
width that you must have.
yeah,
but-
so you could meet the lot width and be a mile deep. Which makes, so that's, I mean, I guess that could be a feature. Most places have like a 3 to 1, 3.5 to 1.
No, we don't have any sort of
Yeah,
ratio.
I know Madison County does.
Yeah,
It's-
as long as it meets the width minimum.
Yeah.
You can go over that and kind of put that any way you
Yeah.
want. Okay, so good on that. So 2 acres with or without sewer or residential.
Yeah.
Rural residential. Next, I'd like to update the definition for chicken keeping. We've had some calls about people interested in like ducks and rabbits. And we really only have a definition for chicken keeping as well as a hobby farm, and some people are not trying to do a hobby farm. So I think limiting the number of these kind of smaller poultry, fowl, rabbits kinds of things is okay, to add to the chicken keeping definition. So if someone wants 6 chickens, they can do that. If they want 6 ducks or 6 pheasants, they can do that.
that looks pretty restrictive to me.
In what way?
Take a typical 4-H kid,
Uh-huh.
put 3 kids in a household, and they've got 4-H, and they want to have rabbits, which are not invasive, aren't noisy,
Mhm.
and maybe some chickens.
Yeah.
I mean, that'd be like 2 animals per child.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure why we're lumping rabbits in there
Don't
with the
have to.
chickens.
You don't have to.
Yeah, I find a big difference between rabbits and turkeys.
This is the definition for what is it, small animals in a hobby farm. It's the last category, so I just copy and pasted it. We certainly don't have
I feel like this would
to keep that.
be overreach.
So are rabbits not permitted?
Well, when someone asks if they can keep chickens, we have a definition for that, but if they want ducks, we don't have anything that says they're allowed to do that unless they have a hobby farm right now. So that's what I'm trying to mitigate, is to, if someone wants to have a couple of ducks in a zone that allows chicken keeping, I want to make sure I have something to back that up to say that they can do that.
What is the definition that we have for chicken poultry keeping?
It's just chicken keeping, you can keep up to 6 hens on your property, no roosters in permitted or conditional use zones. That's all the definition is. So we just want to say like small poultry or something like that. I don't think there's that big of a difference, if you're looking at chickens. But it's just not very clear or apparent, and we have something in there for that, for people who don't want chickens, but a small other animal.
That's fine. Leave it 6.
Right, it's just limiting the number of these kinds of animals.
Is there any other name for a feathered friend that would be more inclusive?
Birds. Birds.
Well, then we'll get people with ostriches.
Yeah.
We don't wanna get that. No rabbits. So I mean, and I'll take rabbits out of here if you'd like, and
Yeah.
kind of just have it be a feathered,
Feathers.
small feathered creatures.
Some for rabbits.
Poultry fowl. So, and those are allowed by right in quite a few of our larger zones, and then you do need a conditional use for them in the smaller residential areas, so, we can assure if someone wants to have something like that, if there's small lots all around, we can require they place it in a certain location, or limit the number even more.
We're just trying to protect the surrounding property owners. more
Yeah,
than anything.
certainly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So if an existing property owner has more than 6 today,
They're
are
fine.
they grandfathered?
What if they got them last year after the UDO was enacted? How do you know when they got them?
I need a chicken inspector, Kyle, I see a badge with your name on it.
No.
You have chickens,
Meeting's out of
you know that stuff.
You didn't have peacock on here,
That's true.
and we have some peacocks running around. I've seen
They're wild.
them.
So you're saying just take rabbits out and leave it?
Yeah, I'll take that out and just kind of update it to a more general definition for small poultry. That's okay with everyone.
Yeah, and you can let us know if that is not enough, if you still have problems with.
Right.
people coming.
Yeah,
Let us
because I
know.
don't
We'll
want,
try to refine it.
I think the county has a 4-H exemption for small animals. They do. So,
Should I look into that, or does that not
Yeah.
count here because we have our own
There's a
jurisdiction?
time limit.
I mean,
on
you could mimic
We could,
something.
we could copy it if we like it.
I'll take a look.
And they do it per acre, so if somebody with 50 acres wants 7 chickens, then they can.
They break it down by animals.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
animal unit.
Really?
Yeah, each animal is with a
We've got
different
that.
unit, so.
We do, it's a hobby farm.
Well, remember we approved the house down on South Main Pelton Avenue. And we told them they could have 1 horse, 1 cow, 2 pigs, 4 sheep, 12 chickens. And we went all the way down the line.
That's before my time, I don't know what that is. But I mean, to your point, there's a difference between chicken keeping and hobby farm. So if you want, more of these kinds of animals and you have more land, that's what it's defined as, and it has a variety of all those kinds of animals, maybe even exotic. But just, this is kind of an even smaller scale of a hobby farm. It's like a mini.
You can change it if it becomes an issue.
They're almost like pets.
Yeah. Okay, so we're good with that, and I will look into that, Kyle, the 4-H, what'd you say, the 4-H ordinance?
Well, it's in their animal definitions, there is
Okay.
something in there about 4-H,
Okay.
something. So,
That'd be very interesting. Okay, next thing that I have is the, maximum gross density, table, so that's table 5.3, in the UDO. I don't recall the page number off the top of my head. But it has all of our density limits for major residential subdivisions. I noticed one of the categories, SF4, is in the wrong table. It's on the next page in the traditional RC style subdivisions. I'd like to just move it to that table. And then we're also missing a density limit.
so SF4 is like the RC for
Mhm.
new subdivisions. But like Howard's Acres, they wanted to go RC, but if you look at the definition of RC, it says infill,
Mhm.
which would be more like Kyle Smith's project, where
Yeah.
but when you're taking a bare piece of ground and starting from scratch,
Mhm.
RC doesn't seem like it's the right choice.
And do we have a definition of what infill is? Cause like just thinking of the Howard's property, I mean, there are surrounding on Madison and Broadway. I mean, it is a lot of infill, but like, where is that line drawn?
Yeah.
You know, like if we were to.
Because if you do 6 units per acre for RC,
Mhm,
and you can build the same thing in RC and SF4, nobody is ever gonna choose SF4
mhm.
because they want the density. So there
Okay.
needs to be some kind of
Yeah.
distinction on what qualifies as an infill project where,
Yeah.
you know, if you're trying to duplicate Broadway, you're gonna want 6 units per acre.
Mhm.
But if you're gonna start
Okay.
with 40 acres and start from scratch,
Right,
then that shouldn't be the same type of development.
right. So like the Urbans property on the west side of the highway, if they wanted to emulate a downtown, they'd use that SF4 zone.
Yeah, versus
But-
RC.
You know, or the Howard's property, yes, would maybe use the RC over that. Or Kyle Smith.
There's just not a lot of distinction between why you would choose one, where one is appropriate versus
Mhm.
where the other one is appropriate.
We should-
So would we
work on
define
defining
that
Yeah,
in our definitions in the beginning and then reference it?
I don't know, maybe we need to look at some
Well-
other ordinances around to see if they're, like Noblesville or a place that has a historic
mhm.
area, how they,
I think that could help too if we, if the RC zoning, if we define what infill means and then also maybe really tighten up the architecture standards really heavily for just that kind of zoning, because it would be those infill projects that are closer to downtown. I think our standards are pretty sufficient for kind of just your typical subdivision. But
Well, you
maybe
could cap-
that's something we could do with it
you
too.
could cap it on, based on acreage or number of lots too, that might be helpful.
Okay, so let's look at describing what infill means. So, I don't know if you have it pulled up there, but the density limit, I guess, for SF4 is that traditional style subdivision. Should it stay in that major residential table or move to the following table? That's for the SF4 and RC zoning styles. I guess I'm just trying to figure out, should we at least take it out now and put it where it belongs, and then we can get into kind of the deeper conversation of distinguishing SF4 from RC? Maybe eventually it would just move back into major subdivisions category. I don't know.
Well, if
Or I
it's
can just-
listed in the wrong table, we need to move it to the correct table now, is
Yeah.
my thought.
Okay.
And then we can further
Okay,
clean it up and define it once we get additional answers regarding the historic district language.
right. And then also, you know, what, like
The
what Kyle
infill,
said, what's
yes.
the definition of infill? Because what would be the incentive to do SF4 if you can get a higher density with nurses?
Just table, so you're saying move it out of table 5.3.
Yeah, because that's not,
That's the major residential, and if the zone, district's permitted, SF4 is not up here, so yeah, you're right.
yeah, it's in the next one. So, okay, so I'll go ahead and do that. So we'll just use half of this amendment and then next month we can kind of look into that. What table is that correlated to, Kyle? 5.4?
Yeah, so are we
We'll
gonna
look into
move
that.
it, are we gonna move the maximum gross density with it for now?
Yeah, I'll move just that SF4
So the table,
language
the 2.5 per acre
and then 8.
and 8,
I'll just move that to where it belongs. And then, yeah, we'll get into defining what those mean, and that might mean a further breakdown of both of those tables. I don't know, they haven't really had that come up yet until Howard's kind of just about that. So, moving with
While we're
that,
still on that one,
sure.
we need to have any further discussions concerning our densities. Be looking at 12.5 units
Overall.
for a multifamily on an acre, looking at 6 in the RC.
That's just a suggestion. That's not anything that's in there that we voted on. That was actually the density limits for SF4 back in a final draft version of the UDO from June of 2021. So I just threw that in there as an example. It doesn't have to be what those density limits are, but it was just an example of the heaviest density that was listed before the UDO was finalized.
I think they did, I mean, the densities currently in table 5.3 seem reasonable. SF4 is 2.5 units, and then the multifamilies are 3 and 4 units per acre.
So why do we have 6 units per acre and 12.5 units per acre listed here on the bottom?
Well, that was just a starting point, I guess, for a discussion. We're not gonna add that part yet. So that's to be.
This is a proposed density limit for RC zoning in that subdivision style that they have. But we need to do some homework on what.
All right, because I have problems with that high density.
Yeah, that's to be that portion, we're gonna
Yes,
postpone any adoption.
yeah, just moving that language to the table it's supposed to be in. So, okay, anything else on that? We're good with moving that language to the correct table? Okay. Next, this was something, Kyle, I think I had brought up to you or something like that with the buffer yards. Because they're only for, like single sites that are developing, like the Dollar Tree on 67, they have a buffer yard. And major subdivisions, but there's nothing for the SF4 or RC subdivisions. They're not required. So I think that might have been excluded because some, again, which I need to do some research on, some of those infill projects like Arabian Point would not, a buffer would not work there. It simply would not fit. So looking at maybe a number of lots that would merit having a buffer of some sort when it comes to that RC or traditional style subdivision. This might be something we want to loop in with defining that table 5.4 a little bit better. But I did want it to be something you guys would was on the radar.
Does it have to be definitive? Can, like a shall, can it be written in a way
Could
that
be a should.
would or could require, so then we don't have to get into this draw the line in the sand, because each
Sure.
parcel just might be kind of unique the way it's structured.
Right.
You
Like-
could-
like-
you could say buffer yards may be required at the discretion of the planning commission.
Sure.
We need something there to start, because if we don't, they won't put anything.
Right. Because it's not required.
If we find enough the way it is, make it bigger.
So if you want, I could start with that. And then I was just suggesting using the buffer yard requirements that we already have in place and just adding major and traditional style subdivision. Maybe an asterisk that says, this, the necessity of this buffer is based on the planning commission. So if it's another type of Kyle Smith subdivision, that obviously doesn't really need a buffer of any sort.
Probably though, if it
but if
falls
it's a
into
big one,
RC, it
Yeah,
probably isn't gonna be big enough to need a buffer.
right.
So
Which is
maybe
where
it's
if we're
just-
defining what infill means.
Yeah,
If this is
once we
not
get
gonna be
that-
more than 20 lots,
Yeah,
Kyle's
we
was
may find that we
13.
don't
But
need
like
it.
right.
Howard's Acres over there wanted RC zoning on 150 lots.
Yeah, but that's why we
So
need to
that
get
seems
that,
large enough. to
and
where
that's
that
why
should
we
kick
need to get that
SF4.
RC defined.
Yeah.
Fine.
And that would
And
take
then
care
we'll
of
see,
the buffer.
maybe, yeah, maybe.
So if it can't, like it, for that example, if that would be not allowed to be zoned RC, it would have to kind of use that SF4.
Mhm.
We still need to.
Then just
make
add
sure-
SF4
then
to the
just add-
buffer
I'll
table.
just add SF4 to major residential subdivision.
Yeah.
And then RC would be its own traditional style subdivision process and requirements. So yeah, we can look into that. But do you want me to update it for now?
I mean, you could just
Jeff,
go ahead
do you
and
think
put
that's possible?
SF4 in there,
Just put it in the chart.
include SF4 in the chart.
Okay.
And then once we further define the difference between RC and SF4, then that'll take care of it.
Okay, so I'll include SF4 in those tables to just follow what a major subdivision has to do. Okay, will do. Okay, the last couple ones here were from last time. So what Denise had told me is that we were looking for more examples, kind of, for the attached single-family homes, as far as lot sizes, architecture, rear load, front load, things of that nature. So I looked at quite a few different places to get some ideas of what other folks do with that style of housing. So we can now scroll. Oh, is that the first one, the first slide? Sorry. That one, yeah. So I do have pictures in here as well. And you're welcome to go through those in there in the presentation. But basically, this attached style was mentioned as an allowable residential product in a conservation style subdivision, and it counts as an anti-monotony criteria. That's why I wanted to define it in the first place, because it just wasn't clear what that meant. It's not a duplex or a two-family. That's a different type of schematic, because that's one parcel with two families in it. These are attached typically on their own lot. And condos, this is not a condo. Those are exempt from the certain provisions of the UDO from Indiana code. So with that said, these are kind of what I had found as far as an average of things. So attached single family housing is a very shotgun parcel with a home on it. Either the person who owns it or an HOA maintains any sort of grass or open space that's on it. And they're more dense style housing. So I can imagine that's why the conservation subdivision mentioned that was allowable, because the point of that is to put all of the development in one spot and preserve as much open space and nature space as possible. And that's a really great way to do that. But we just don't really have any standards for it. So that's what I'm looking to get out of you guys tonight is, this is what I have, more than welcome, open to suggestions on it. But I kind of just took what was in the SF4 zoning and the RC zoning, because I do think we should limit where this is allowable, or at least to go by percentages. And so I just inputted some things here. So how would you like me to walk through this with you?
So like Mustin's subdivision up here on Fennel Avenue,
Yeah.
what would that be?
That is zoned SF3.
Well, I'm saying like if somebody came in with a duplex product
Oh, and wanted to do that?
I mean,
We don't have
you said two family was
one parcel.
one
two-
ownership,
One parcel, two families, yeah,
so it's not a, I mean,
no.
what, does that ever happen? That's
I mean, the
kind of-
Rings have a duplex on South Main Street. So that's
Oh,
two individual living spaces separated by either a north-south or east-west party wall. I suppose you could make it a condo if they wanted to purchase it, but again, that's exempt from anything.
So technically a duplex would be attached single family,
If it was on separate parcels.
which those are, I'm pretty sure there's.
Yeah, we don't have any way to have Mustin come in and do that again.
Well, he could do it under this attached single family.
Yes, right, but
But-
right now our UDO doesn't.
So
speak
if
to
you
the
add that in,
limits.
you could have a duplex that's got two 20-foot wide units in it. That seems weird.
I don't think I understand what you're saying.
Well, like, usually you have a duplex definition that's more somewhere in between a townhome and a single family, wider.
Okay.
And then you would have a like attached single family for 3 or more units, which would be like a townhome where you'd have 20-foot wide lots.
I have to up the square feet on the duplex,
Okay,
or of a condo. I see what cost is. The shotguns you're talking about are,
Yeah, and you can have 4, 5, 6
Right,
units all in the
right,
same building. They're
right.
basically the width of the garage
Right.
and go 2 or 3 floors.
we could certainly limit it to 1 unit per lot.
Well, I think that is assumed that each unit is individually owned. But I'm saying the style is much different for a 2-family attached or 2-unit attached versus 3, 4, 5-unit attached. Maybe they need their own column.
Well, yeah, I definitely think it does need its own column, but, you know, these would be lots with just a shared party wall, 1 entrance, 1 family. They
Yeah.
would not be multiple
Yeah.
units in 1 building attached to another unit in another building that has multiple families in it. So it's just 1 ownership, 1 family residence, you know, 1 entrance.
The only thing I saw also was
cut hairs.
on your minimum side yard setback, it would probably be better to say 0-foot shared wall and then 10-foot end unit. Because if you have multiple units that aren't on a corner,
Mm-hmm.
you know, if you have 2 buildings next to each other.
Yeah.
The end units aren't corner lots. Corners are where streets are.
Mhm.
So you're saying that it needs to be either end unit or between buildings in some fashion instead of saying 10-foot corner lot.
Yeah, I can do end
So-
unit. That's totally fine.
That's all just a technicality.
Yeah.
But the minimum lot width of 20 feet, it works good for 3, 4, 5 units in a row. But if
Yeah.
you have it like a Mustin where it's a duplex, the 20-foot really isn't like that.
Well, that's a minimum. You can go as big as you want. So,
Do
and
they own the townhomes when they do that? Put 4 of them together?
No, they sell
Or-
each
yeah.
unit, so
You should-
the Mustin ones are separated. They own the structure and the ground.
Well, that's a condo. You talk about 2 big buildings. How about the shotguns? It was like,
they're fee-owned lots.
Be simple, yeah. So, and
Where did we derive the 20-foot minimum road frontage? Lot
Road.
width?
the lot width, well, I'm looking at the minimum width of a primary structure in the first column there, for single family and 2-family residential. So I had looked at some other products that were 20 to 25 feet wide. So if you have an interior product, the parcel is only gonna be as wide as the face of your home.
Party wall,
Party wall,
So
party
20
wall.
foot, that makes sense on an internal unit.
Yeah,
20 feet.
And then everything else just mimics the single family, since these are single family, they're just attached pieces. So the comment about the side yards, So that's kind of really the biggest thing that's changing, and then the maximum impervious surface, it's usually going to be much higher. But I think that since if you were to take the minimum 20 by 100, there's still a lot of room for some grass in the front or backyard.
I still think if you have attached single family and they bring in duplexes, you're gonna end up with units that are much smaller than you want, having a minimum lot width of 20 feet.
But you're gonna have to define condo, duplexes, and shotgun house, or town.
Okay.
There's 3 different styles there.
So we have dwelling 2-family, which
The one,
is defined already.
the Blake brothers wanted to build those townhomes. It's been 2 summers ago. We met with them. On Madison Avenue, they had townhomes built on the eastern side of that property, had apartments along the tracks.
Oh, yes.
They had townhomes on the easterly side of that property. They were neck and neck.
Yes.
They were gonna sell them. There's no rental in there.
Right, so if they're sold as condos, everything is, I mean, that's all exempt as long as the parcel fits our standards.
Up there,
Yeah, but typically on a condo, you only own inside the walls.
inside
Right.
drywall, yeah.
But that's
Yes.
different than a townhome, which you own the ground in front and in back
Okay,
You gotta go,
to the party wall.
right.
So there's a
Okay.
That's what
differentiation.
I'm saying, there's a condo, a duplex, and a townhome.
okay, so these would be townhomes in your.
Yeah, so we should
Okay.
probably add a duplex column and a townhome.
Townhome, don't.
And so in the duplex column, you have to have 2 units for it to be, so number of units, 2. In the townhome column, you could have 3 to 8 units, or however many you want to have.
Same with the condo, you can have 2, 3, or 4 in one structure.
Mhm. So this is almost, I mean, like row housing. Yeah,
And on the attached single family, they will be required to provide on-property parking for the resident or the owner, correct?
yes. They would have to have I think a minimum of 2 spaces or like in the garage.
Rare.
You can do the rear or the front. That's stuff we need to discuss too.
Because mathematically, principal artery and minor artery, the setbacks at 20 feet do not support primary structure, let alone any parking.
Well, so local street would be a subdivision. If you've got 25 feet between the front of the building and the right of way line, you can fit 2 cars in the driveway and 2 cars in the garage.
It works in the bottom too, but if you're on a minor arterial or a principal
You
arterial,
got 75 feet.
that's 1,500 square feet. Lot size of 2,000, then you got 800 for the basic dwelling. And there's nothing for parking.
Well, you would park within that setback. Right. That would be the driveway.
It would be nearly impossible to do anything off of those roadways, and we don't allow driveway cuts onto those roads anyway.
And I think the rear yard setback minimum for a townhome, if it's a rear load, you want at least a 20-foot driveway, otherwise people can't park in there.
So I would assume that, you know, if. I just wonder if that would become, there would be dedicated right of way. Thinking out loud, sorry. Yes,
Do we have a map that identifies what the principal, minor, collector, and local streets are?
Mhm, yeah.
Is that out on the?
it's in our, it's in our thoroughfare plan on the
Thoroughfare plan,
website.
thank you.
So you're gonna work on this and we'll
Yeah.
review it again
Your
next time.
feedback.
I think all the townhomes that's come before us in the past, none of them have come to life.
No, they
They were
haven't.
all rear load alleys.
Yes. So that's another thing,
Well,
you know,
Either it was 3 or 13, they were all alleys coming in the back.
Our instances were front loads, but it just depends on the property.
Right. And it would also be the zoning style, you know, the rear load is more favorable, like in RC.
Well, we made it a regular point to do that because of the traffic. Cuts on Main.
Absolutely. So that was something I had also added in the asterisks at the bottom for local street is that and we had this unbolded text for all of our zoning anyway, that if you utilized a rear side load garage, you got a shallower front setback than if you utilized a front load garage. So I kind of included something extra there, that those front load garages, I think that for the most part, they should come off of some sort of access road. So that, you know, if you're gonna have these homes that are much closer together and driveways that are much closer together, having that many people turn out onto the road, and also the pedestrian experience is extremely interrupted going over driveway every 10 feet. Having like a small, not necessarily private drive, but just a frontage road for those kinds of units that are only front load. Now rear load, I think is totally fine. Sort of off of an alley. It's like a front alley. So another thing to consider when we kind of get more into the nitty gritty of this. So if you could go to the first examples page. Picture page. Yes. Okay, so you are defining these as townhomes. What is up here?
I would
Correct.
say all three of those are townhomes.
Okay,
Agree.
I just want to make sure I understand you correctly. So
So
this
just to
is,
make sure we got good definitions. and-
yeah, because to me, this is single family attached.
No, these are counties.
Well, a townhome is single family.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the definition that we added was a single family structure on its own parcel that shares a party wall and has its own separate entrance. Or one family cannot be subdivided into further units than the single one. So that's what I see.
Mhm.
So,
But if there's only two units together, then it's a duplex, because those are different products. They call them, well, they have another name for duplex. Drawing a blank.
two family?
Well, two-family, you're saying is common ownership, though.
Correct.
But a duplex is individual ownership of each unit with a party wall. Like a townhome, but you only have, so they look more like a single-family home
Right, so that's
than a
kind
town,
of
than
musted.
a town. Yeah,
like
that's
the-
what I would call Mustin's.
Okay.
stuff. It's the duplex.
Gotcha, yeah. And that did kind of spur some of this on because I was like, we don't really have clear rules for if a Mustin were to
Well,
want to
because
come in
the
here.
property on 67, they wanted to do duplexes initially.
Along
Am I?
67, that's right.
They want to do it on the north end, they were out into
Mm-hmm.
the drywall, and you own the drywall end.
Mhm. Yes, right. Okay, so I will look into that a little bit more. Were there any other aspects of this that, you know, would give you pause, like the impervious surface coverage? The side setbacks for those end units?
20 feet between buildings is good. You might look at the height. If
Okay.
you have three-story townhomes, 30 feet,
Mhm.
you might want 35.
So one of them, the SF4 is defined. I just use the height of a single family.
Yeah.
But the RC zoning is same number of stories as the majority of existing primary structures on the block. So again, I think if we get that infill definition
Yeah,
defined.
that's why that RC doesn't make sense. for
To just
people right
swamp
now.
out somewhere, it doesn't,
Yeah.
yeah. So, okay, excellent.
So are we allowing front load?
We will find that out, yeah, when we get to it. We can, or we cannot. It's up to you guys. What are your thoughts
No.
on,
I mean, aesthetically, everything looks great with the alley load here.
Mhm.
I don't
I
think
guess-
he'd want front
So-
load.
well, if
So
you go to the
now-
next one, it's the front load. Cause I found some examples of it. So there's, you know, products above the garage. There's products that have kind of something next to it in the front load. I don't think it looks bad.
So down on that map you've got, if you've got those units on the back side of the property,
Hmm.
like the two that are right up against the tree line, you don't necessarily want the front doors of those units just looking into the edge of the property. That's where a front load would make sense, is in the back. I think if you don't like the front load, then you could say no front loads visible from perimeter streets or something. So that the ones that you see as you drive along the outside would all be rear load.
Or with that
So, like-
frontage, with having the frontage road, then gives you the opportunity to.
But the one on the right, the front load, that, their front doors in the front also.
Yeah, that's
Right, a few of these are, and then this one
They're all-
sits up on top. So it's just stacked upwards.
yeah, so that one on the right is a front load townhome.
Right.
And so on the back, you just have a patio.
One of those a front load.
Yeah.
they're
All three of them.
They're all
They're
front.
all, they all are.
But I think there's instances where the front load could make sense.
Like on the Bagley property where those duplexes were going to go, what would be appropriate there? In your,
Along 67.
Yeah.
You just stepped on your toes.
oh, did I?
You said duplexes, not townhomes. That was my point earlier.
I mean, a lot of times if you're gonna put townhomes
I
along
was
a
just
main
saying what
road,
you did.
you're gonna do
There's a big difference, I'm telling you, between a duplex and a condo and a townhome.
yeah, a
I'm
duplex,
getting real confused right here.
yeah, a duplex is a giant single family home, basically, that's what it looks like.
Big brick
One
houses,
level.
5,000 square feet cut down.
Yeah.
It's a duplex.
One level.
One level, it's a condo. Condo 6,000 square feet cut down.
So I think there's instances where you wanna allow a front load, but maybe limit it.
I think we should.
Well, the reason I brought it up is there have been several comments about people that have put driveways, parking areas in front of their homes in the core. And that's something that was being discouraged. And now it looks like that by allowing the front load and 20 feet worth of width of parking, to allow two vehicles, that we're basically opening that door again and encouraging it.
Well, we could limit this to not be in the RC infill zoning where the rear load only is appropriate. And then the SF4.
You could have somebody in a historic district tear down an old home and want to build something like that, those are narrow, especially the one on the left.
Mhm.
On the left.
Well, I have some homework to do. And I will probably pick your brains before next month. But what are your thoughts on the allowance of this in the SF4 RC zones only? Or it could be a percentage of each style and each kind of zoning.
Well, I mean, not these pictures, but when I go back to the other with the backloading garages, the one in the center, aside from material, I mean, that's what was originally built in historic districts. Right? If you scroll back in the center,
Yeah.
that looks like something you see in a historic district, minus the materials.
Yeah.
So why would we not allow for something that's replicating?
No, I think it's, I
Something
think allowing it in
historic.
SF4.
Yeah, we would
RC.
allow it in SF4
Yes.
and RC. But probably not the other ones because they don't have the same variety of housing. And they're kind of, SF3 could be argued that it could have some of that because it allows two-family. It allows some multifamily if you get a conditional use, I think. But everything forward of that, SF2, SF1, RR, those are the districts for it. So it's our more dense and variety districts where this would be allowed. Really, I could just see us starting with these two and see how it goes. then really SF3 is the only other one I think that if we wanted to allow it at some point would be appropriate for it. But yeah, we want that to be built.
Those products are gonna come here.
Yes, they are. So we need some standards for them. So,
With regards to the monotony, looking at those products, I've yet to see an illustration with a brick structure. All of the most recent developments that I have seen go in, that I've driven around, I've yet to see an all brick home. How do we add more diversity into the exterior materials and get back to a mix of frame construction with brick construction?
Well, we updated our UDO after anything that is currently being finished.
correct.
So standards are much different.
Are you talking about built here or built elsewhere?
Kind of both.
Well,
And I understand that what's
I'm just
being built
focused on,
is
yeah, our
pre,
town.
Yeah.
but, you know, we've historically had a good mix of brick structures, all brick structures with frame structures. And I am not seeing any of that in, all of our various examples, and I don't believe we require
No, we don't
Or incent.
require.
any architectural diversity when it comes to
We had
mixing these
had
neighborhoods.
conversations on tightening that up.
So I think with defining RC better, I think I had mentioned earlier that can also be a time when we can require extra features or extra architecture standards. Things like front porches. This says, required when the block has some. I think it should just be required. It's a look. Just because your neighbor or two doesn't have one, I think that's pretty important. Like things like that. So if that's the point where we want to put in some things like that, we certainly can.
I agree with Brad. I think they even carry it over to commercial too, 'cause we're not seeing that on any of our commercial buildings. It's Grand Union, Wolfie's, Starbucks,
Well, that brings up,
losing the bricks, charms, old town feel.
that brings up having that overlay district at that corridor, because we have these standards for our homes, but, and I'm not talking just the materials used, but when you pull in, it's still, you could be anywhere USA, because it's the same building.
It's the same product that you see at every exit.
Exactly, and we are one of 2 historic districts in our entire state, and I think when you pull in, it needs to feel that way. And we can't lose that. That's something very unique about us, and we have to somehow convey that to all the developers. And you mentioned, Brad, the word incent. I feel like there needs to be more discussion there on how we can incentivize that. And I'm not saying everything needs to look like it came from 1880, but some characteristics, some charm, some all brick, and the monotony standards as far as their products. So it's not the same
Yeah.
restaurant, bank that you see everywhere. That one, when you pull in, should be special.
Where should I look for those?
So we could do a State Street
Some-
overlay that requires 100% brick, and I would do it.
And unique product, a monotony product
So, I
commercially.
mean, Carmel has overlay districts. I mean,
They
you go to the
do.
Village of West Clay and you
That's
look at the CVS at the Village of West Clay.
It has
It's
a
the only one like
19, it's, yes,
It's Art Deco.
Art
Same
Deco.
as the Lowe's and Carmen's all brick.
Okay.
So you could do an overlay within some 330 feet of State Street. You have to follow this special set of requirements.
You said Village of West Bay.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you ever want a field trip, I'll go with you.
We've been
There's lots of rear loaded, old
Yep.
style looking homes.
Great examples.
Mhm.
But that would be, that wouldn't affect the zoning because they, even the stuff that hasn't happened out there yet,
Right.
You could
Wouldn't
still-
affect-
you could still shape that
Right.
if you have to do something in the next 6 months. I mean,
It has to be quick.
Yes.
It
Yes.
can't be a year or 2 from now
No, it'd be
because
too late.
it's already set.
Yeah.
You've got
Right.
4 other construction projects out there, and you're already gonna have the
Yes.
same image you have for every exit on the I-69 corridor.
We do think.
Community hospitals coming, you got these subways coming.
What were you saying?
We need to think about more green space out there too.
Yeah.
It makes a difference, especially when you're talking about for the community. It makes a difference in your commercial builds, like next to State Street. It doesn't have to be a huge green space, but it needs to be very thoughtful about how much we put into the building. Like a town, cruising.
And what we want, like, what we want to attract there, instead of they decide they want to be there. As a town, what do we want to attract to 69? And we have a list. We know X, Y, Z. This is what we envision when you pull in, and that's what we're pitching. And I think a lot of people would shake their heads on that because they moved here if they weren't already born here, because they like that charm. They like this. They came here because it's historic Pendleton.
So with that said, green space stuff and having that town kind of feel, I mean, I know we do have requirements of impervious surfaces for businesses, but we also require trails or sidewalks and trees. So anything that develops coming in on state will be required to do that. There's a 10-foot trail going in front of the Starbucks Bank building that's actually connecting to the Fall Creek overpass. We have an old bridge we're gonna use to put back over top of that, connect to Taylor Street. So that's kind of one aspect I think that we're already moving on.
We have sidewalks on the north side of State Street out by where the new Wolsey's is being constructed.
They will,
Standard 6,
that'll be fine.
5.
And then Heritage Way North will have sidewalk on one side, trail on the other, as per the street standards. The other thing, I definitely think that if we want to tighten up these architecture standards, I'm definitely happy to look at what these other districts have. If you have recommendations, please send them to me. But it is very easy to make things look monotonous and make them look like Disneyland. So we have to be extremely careful what we require when it comes to materials so that we don't have that fakey, 1800s, whatever Disneyland look. Now, when you go to Disneyland, it's very good and convincing. I think I'm in Star Wars, but like you don't want that fake feel. So how do we do
An
that?
example is the bank over here.
Mhm.
That wasn't always there. That was built 15, 16 years ago.
I think it was 2007.
Okay.
I guess. I was
So
just
I was right
inventorying
around
it.
the money there.
Cut down the Christmas.
So that was built then, and that doesn't look hokey, fake. Feel, it has that feel.
Mhm.
That's a prime example right in front of us.
Gotcha. So please send me suggestions. I will put
So
something.
yeah, overlay
together.
district is probably the way. to do it.
Overlay is
Yeah.
definitely the way to go, or a buffer of some sort.
But I do feel like we need to have some thought on what we want to attract there.
Now, would that go both directions or just from 69 to downtown? Or would it go all the way out to 67?
I take it all the way to 67.
69 to 67?
And then
Or
that's
town limit.
38 picks up
Take
there.
it 30, take it to 300 west.
At school?
Sure.
Yeah, there's a corner lot up there for sale.
Sale.
At the roundabout.
Okay.
West corner.
I will do that. I will look into that. So, if we're done with the attached single-family homes and architecture stuff, do you want to move on to exterior materials, or is there anything else you want to touch on with that? Yes.
Let's go to exterior.
Okay. All right, so I have some examples of standing seam metal has the exposed fasteners and then the non-exposed fasteners. Right now, the material requirements doesn't state which one can or can't be used. So I think from what I heard from the last meeting, you want to avoid the exposed fastener kind of metals.
For all districts or?
That's up to you guys. Fill out your homework. Did you?
You're gonna see a lot of,
Because I can take that and put it all together. And put
you're gonna
something
have to see a
together for
lot
you.
of residential homes with exposed fastener metal.
You are or not?
Yes, they are,
Okay, on the roof or on
for
for,
roof.
okay.
It's a trend now, people think metal lasts forever, they're frustrated with shingles,
Mhm.
it comes in cycles.
So,
It's very common to put exposed fastener metal on a residential roof,
so
even in town or the country.
we can prohibit that and have it only be concealed fasteners,
That's fine.
okay?
In
Do
the
the
SS
ex-
districts?
Do the exterior fasteners, are they that significant of an issue?
No, it was just, sometimes you get it in a nice downtown historic building, it's a big difference between the standing seam product.
Well,
And it's a big difference in cost.
we're just talking about, we're not talking about roofs though.
Well, it's exterior materials.
Well, I
didn't think
find
it-
a difference between roofs and siding
Yeah,
with that, or am I
would
wrong?
agree.
Well, no,
It
you're
is an
not.
exterior material.
I mean, because you're not really seeing down on a roof
Most,
aside for that, unless it's a high pitch or the decorative piece over the porch. Is it,
most of your vertical metal is exposed fastener.
But- well, I'm not talking about walls, I'm talking about the approval on
Roofs.
the roof.
We typically don't require any sort of, we do require a pitch, a certain type of pitch in the anti-monotony standards, but not a material. I think most of our materials are geared towards siding and structure.
You might check, I thought at one time that you couldn't have exposed fastener metal in the historic district.
So are we,
But some people
Just-
put it on, there's a big stick about it.
are we just doing this historic or are we doing it all? I thought we were talking all. Because I also find those two very different. What we
So
want in a
this-
historic versus elsewhere.
Well, this is from that table, so it has all of our zoning districts on it, so if you wanna prohibit it in its entirety in downtown business or RC zoning, you can. And then it's allowed anywhere else as long as it's a concealed metal fasteners.
One was just on North Carolina, exposed fasteners. Just north of the cemetery. East side of it, very warm to that.
Is that RC zoning?
One is roofing contractors, I don't know beans about zoning. Don't put metal on
You have to get a permit, right?
If you get a permit, yeah.
there if you get a permit.
You mean there's people sneaking underneath the radar?
You know, we give you a list the last 2 weeks, no permits down.
I Brett does, he would know off the top of his head better than I would. Anyway, so the materials tables that you guys had last time, did you fill them out or any questions, or how would you like to proceed with that?
The biggest one I brought up last time is I thought we had precluded vinyl siding from virtually all of the single-family classifications. We've had a lot of discussions before the new UDO came into place. We negotiated it out with the contractors, and went to other product. And then in the UDO, it was basically allowed in.
It's allowed everywhere except the businesses.
Correct.
Uh-huh.
And that was the one thing that I thought we had prohibited. Obviously, we didn't.
Mhm.
So that was the biggest thing that I Xed off the bottom there.
And we're okay, we're allowed to prohibit
Well,
something everywhere?
I think we are because we have other prohibited materials like plywood,
Shoe
and
press board.
sheet press board, things like that. So I think we can, but I don't think it would necessarily be wise to completely prohibit it. Brad, what I think we should do is allow a certain percentage of the non-facade areas, so the side and rear of the home to be vinyl, should they be vinyl. And hopefully that would just kind of discourage folks to not use it anyway. But I don't exactly know if prohibiting it in its entirety is a wise choice.
Aren't there a number of substitutable products, though, that are in the same cost-effective range as vinyl that we've talked to the other developers about?
Well,
Could be, Tim, you
yeah, I
might
have a
know better
stopping
than I do.
point too. They're gonna put vinyl up underneath the soffit on the front doors.
Okay.
They want to put vinyl on the fascia boards. That's a percentage.
How about I look into some other places and see what their policies might be?
Take a look and drive down through Hamilton County, look at the subdivisions down there that have vinyl, look at the quality of the product, look at the exterior, look at the waves, look at the bows, look at the buckling, and you'll very quickly see that the products are not standing up over time.
But we do have, regardless of what zone it's used in, we do have rigidity standards for the vinyl. It has to be of a certain, I don't remember what it's called in there, but it does have a standard for that. I think it's on the page after the exterior materials table.
So you're talking about banning the exposed fastener in all districts? Seems a little excessive, especially in
Especially in accessory buildings.
ag and
I
rural
agree,
residential.
it needs to be, I'm telling you, it needs to be defined.
Right,
Only before, you only allowed standing seam in a historic district 10 years ago, people putting up screwed metal. This guy was mad because he could put up screwed metal and you did, and no one told anyone the difference. Because you didn't get a permit, and he did.
so how about I come back next time with that table filled out based on your comments this evening? And then some definitions as well, when it comes to things like standing seam metal.
I think from a legal standpoint, outright bans about it.
Yes.
I
Starting to get builders associations to look at that and
As
start to make
just-
constitutional takings, arguments, all kinds of stuff.
And inclusion.
Yeah, so I think the percentage, but there's other ways to regulate it.
Right. And then things like that, you know, a certain rigidity or a certain
Gauge,
product,
yeah.
gauge that typically lasts longer would be okay to
Yeah.
require something like
But yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
The better you can relate it to health and safety,
Mhm.
the more likely the regulations will stick.
Gotcha. Okay, so we need, some definitions for the exposed and concealed, as well as what zones both of those would be appropriate and inappropriate in. What I'm hearing is that in the ag and maybe some of the larger residential areas, this would be a little bit more appropriate for either the primary or the secondary structure. In some of our more dense zones and historic zones, it would not be appropriate. Sealed version would be that. Okay, I can do that. And then, last thing is the EFS. This was something we've kind of had a long ongoing discussion about. At first, this was defined as Drive It, which is a brand, and we can't outright ban a certain brand either. So we just changed it to what it was, which was EFS, but we should probably look at what zones that's allowed and disallowed in. Because from what I'm told, it's a pretty diverse product. It does insulate very well if it's, warranted for up to 60 years.
Very, very common product.
And it's a very common product, and it can be made to look like a lot of different things. So as our architecture standards sit right now, if we have to have a texture change or something like that every 30 to 60 feet on a commercial building, this is a really nice way to do that. So scroll to the next one, please. These are some examples. I mean, you could have something that looks like brick, stone, a stucco, wood, cedar planking, cinder block, that's the word. So it has a lot of variety, and I've heard it's a pretty well-made product, so.
So why would you ban it in any district?
I don't
It's
know,
not cheap.
I've
I don't
tried,
think we want to ban it at all. Just probably look at it individually.
and so on
Take a
the,
picture, remodel downtown.
on the materials table,
Yeah.
the ethos was originally called Drive It, and I had noticed that's a brand, not a product. So I had suggested to you guys, let's just change it to ethos, that's more general, it's like Kleenex and tissues. But then looking at it more, I didn't really understand why it was disallowed in so many districts. And I've called KK and Rachel and Kayla, and members of the steering committee, and I can't really find a solid answer for why. So I don't know if it was just some miscommunication or something was misinterpreted, or there were certain products of Drive It that are not appropriate because they aren't, kind of like certain vinyl is not very well made, if that's what that was going for. So if we want to just take that out or just put allowed in all districts, let me know. The only one that has a limit on it is our downtown business. They are only allowed to use a 20% EFS, and all exterior changes have to be approved by the HPC anyway. So if they think it's appropriate and want to update that, I will ask them, but they seem to be fine with the 20% limit as it is right now.
So if they have a 20% limit on ethos, but they're allowed to do split face block, what if they do ethos that looks like split face block? I mean, what's the difference?
Well, it's a texture change, so it counts as a.
I mean, these
as a
look like all the
material.
different materials, so I don't know why you would say you can only have 20% of this superior surface. And I mean,
I will ask Bob Post.
and I'm sure it's come a long way.
Please don't.
But that's just as it was written
Yeah.
in there before, so if it's appropriate to update it to something else, I'll see.
I mean, if you have
How they
only
feel about it.
20% of each finish,
Yeah,
then it can all be 5 different kinds of ethos on there. That would make
Right.
sense.
and
Smooth, rough.
they, the HPC has, because they only dictate the just exterior aesthetic. They have a little bit of a different guideline, and than our downtown business, since everything has to go through them anyway. So I have been trying to figure out a way to make those two documents talk to each other a little bit better, because sometimes it's hard to tell which one to go off of. So I am working on that. So in light of this, I can try to make something like that work.
But you can let them know that we're okay.
So, how about we just update EFS, I can just remove it from the table. Or change all the names.
Yeah, leave it. It's cool.
Okay, everyone okay with that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
The other parts of this, I will look into, some definitions, as well as, if you have those tables for me, it would really help so that I can put them all together, kind of into a document that reflects your, thoughts. Feel free to email that to me, or if you want to drop it off here anytime, that's fine too. So it kind of goes hand in hand with that is the architecture standards for accessory structures. We don't actually have it. All of the material exterior materials table. It's for primary structures, for structures that are being remodeled or rehabbed or redone 51% or more. So it doesn't speak to those. I don't know if that's something we want to get into that level of nitty gritty, or, you know, just anything that is excluded from a zoning for the exterior table, that's the primary, the secondary must follow. that same kind of List of allowed products,
I think it should apply to all buildings on.
all
parcel.
buildings.
I agree.
Okay, so I can go ahead and define that now, and it'll just be as it sits with this one amendment of EFS, that all primary structures, accessory structures, and then any structures that are modified 51% more, we have to follow the new building materials code.
What's, why 51%?
I think if it's over,
That is a
then
rule. You
you're,
can't say 25%.
huh?
You can't say over 25%
You
remodel.
can if you want me to.
I mean, I don't know.
I
Seems-
think it's because it's saying that you're changing such a significant amount that it's gonna look different, so you need to follow the new rules. You're not just fixing some things up here and there. So that's the same for rebuilding in a floodway. It has to be damaged 51% or more, and you can't rebuild it. If it's anything less than that, you can rebuild your project. So. Okay. Well, that's all I have. Any other comments or
I
amendments
guess
you want me
real
to
real
look at?
quick, what is it, a reasonable starting point for restricting vinyl siding?
I mean, if we have it agreed on in the next meeting, we certainly can, but we have no developments in the pipeline or approved that are using vinyl.
I guess I'm looking for a recommendation. Is it 20% of the,
Oh,
the
percentage
building.
wise,
from a percentage perspective? So that you have
I don't like
alternate
it.
materials, but it's just the roof gables and or soffits overhang and fascia board? Is there a percentage that is, people are comfortable with?
So I think the two things we need to do by November is have that percentage, the vinyl siding. Secondly, how much brick, the look we want in our coming to town, downtown, out here. That's gonna sneak up on us real quick.
How do we get overlay districts?
Same way you do it. This public hearing.
So
Would we
how-
just put
how
it on
far
the-
could you squeeze that into a timeline?
30 days.
I mean, could you do all that in 3 months or?
Yeah.
You probably have to study steering committee and all that.
For an overlay district though, I mean, this board, this commission can make certain findings. And ultimately, of course, has to be approved by the council, but no, you could, 3 months, I mean, no time to dally, but
Yeah.
by the time it gets warm again, it can be, sure,
It needs to be on the front burner.
yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's- couldn't miss a month. We couldn't miss a month.
So
And
you
you are
can,
allowed to have special meetings, you know, if we really want to put some pedal to the metal, we
Okay.
can speed it up a little more.
so for November, you could have a draft overlay district for us to review?
Do you mean as far as the locations of such and what
Well,
the standards must be
yeah,
within
just
it?
like, yeah, just pull together some standards.
My question is, should the overlay district extend to both sides of 69 a certain degree? So that you don't have a stark contrast west, I'll say
I think
west
it
of
should go at least as far as our I-69,
the key.
The corridor or the
corridor.
I-69.
yeah.
How far do you want to go, Russ?
I'm pleading
We
with it.
don't care about the people on the west side.
I know. The disenfranchised
No,
side.
It's just one of those things.
Right.
I don't think we want to stark
Cut off.
difference.
Well,
Where
that's
you
what
have-
some of the focus, very quick focus meetings will discuss, right?
That needs to be full steam ahead.
Yep.
That and the vinyl siding.
Anything else on this? Okay, I do have one update for you for the. Oh, okay.
We have to vote on our changes.
For a recommendation. Yep.
Entertain a motion to approve the recommended changes to the UDO amendments as stated tonight and recorded.
Or are you looking for a motion?
So look for motion.
Oh, I'll make a motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Have a motion and a second to approve the changes to the UDO as stated tonight. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed? So change.
And so I have one update for you, one comp plan amendment, and then any public comment from there on out. The MCOG I-69 corridor plan, the town is working with them. It's just Rusty and myself, and they're kind of still doing some of the background legwork. But an MOU is working on being created, and each planning commission will vote on adopting or rejecting that. So they're planning on having some educational sessions with you guys once that's drafted. So that's the latest on that.
So is that the unified effort across multiple communities to establish standards, looks and feels on the I-69 corridor?
Yeah, so it's just meet or exceed this. And with what I have seen so far, we're exceeding everything. But it's just kind of so there's a consistent feel along there, but giving people their, obviously their own unique communities. So something like access management was a big one. Street standards, putting in proper sized lanes as well as sidewalks and street trees, things like that. So it's just kind of a basic set of these standards for design.
Questions or comments from the board?
All right,
I guess next meeting I would like more updates on that as to what that MOU, what the value of it really is.
I'm confused by your question.
As I look at the I-69 corridor in Madison County, from my perspective, much of the tone has already been set with the development that's been allowed by the municipalities.
Mhm.
So as I look at it, my question is, what do we get from that by participating in the process that enhances the Pendleton community?
Thanks, too late.
Take a look, beginning at the county line coming up the I-69 corridor. I mean, the tone's already been set there. There is some vacant farm properties in between. The next exit we're trying to deal with, just north of 38, we already have lapel setting standards and accepting businesses that we were not encouraging here.
Which will
and did
use
not
our
want.
exit.
We continue up. Anderson has its own agenda, and it seems to be industrial development, which, really doesn't in any way complement us, because all we get is the truck traffic and the visibility across the street of industrial development. Continuing up, suddenly you're in Delaware County, up there at the Daleville exit. So there's not a whole lot of areas to impact. So I'm trying to understand what the benefit is and whether we actually derive any benefit from this consortium of communities.
They just approached us about this. They have funding to do it. And that's really all that I've got. So, this is
Where's
not
the-
something that's going to supersede or overtake any of the standards that we have.
They're not gonna really tell us what to do.
No, it's not. But there is some projective data and software that they are using for this for communities that have comp plans with future land use projections. It's a modern technology called Urban Footprint. That's really cool. So there is a benefit in that. And, if we were to follow our comp plan, what would our build out be? What would our utility needs be? Energy, water, sanitary, sewer, things like that.
So it's
That's kind of
infrastructure-
another aspect.
It's
of it.
infrastructure planning and forecasting.
Yeah.
Primarily, it's transportation. is really what their bread and butter is, right, Anna? MCOG? Yes,
Yeah, but they do like different. things.
right.
Where was the funding again? I know I read about it, but it's out of my mind. And then are we involved with the Indiana Economic Development Corporation at all?
We have Madison
We-
County Economic Development.
But as a state, our states, is there any communication?
We had lunch with them last week. Didn't we? Was that IEDC? The
That was
Monday,
MC.
yeah, the people that were presenting were IEDC.
Because the
that's right.
state's initiative is growth and it is bringing industry back.
And they gave us a list of grant programs that we can
Yeah, That's right.
suggest to potential community partners. And we do have a contact now that we can use at IEDC.
And that would be stuff Carrie would be working on if we're eligible for any of those grants. They were very, I don't think that any of them really would be.
I only ask because
Would
we
be
have a
appropriate for-
designated technology sector area. And I mean, I start to look at this and again, it's us presenting to what we want, not people coming here telling us what they want for our town. And I think that really makes a difference in something like that tech sector, which we're already now eventually gonna have that half road with that parcel.
Yeah.
And that other piece is, so my thought is, what are we doing to showcase that as future? And I know it's not for sale yet, but I feel like they need to understand what we have. I just want to make sure we're working with all of the moving pieces because the state is moving. I've never seen it move this fast. I've
Yeah.
never seen them do projects this fast.
We can definitely look at any of those grants that are eligible, we would be eligible or be able to use to incentivize someone to come here and working with them.
Any comments, questions? Sir, you've sat here all night very patiently. Do you have anything to add or say, or
Well, I know what you guys thought.
feel free to come and put it if you'd like to say something.
Name's Bob Sturgeon. I live on 425 in the old airstrip out there. So now they're flying parachute motorized thing. Just kind of concerned about that. You know, before when the biplanes are there, they would bank immediately when they take off. Now these people, it's like a circus. So just kind of wanted to know if anybody's going to address that.
That property is sold, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so,
Who owns the property now?
I don't,
Do they also own the barn?
I don't,
The hangar?
I don't know,
I think it's all one property.
but it's just, you know, it's a little unnerving, you know.
Okay.
I mean, you know, it's kind of, like you said, kind of quaint, you know, here, but I mean, it's like a flying circus out there when they take off. When the biplanes are there, it's pretty unique, you know.
They probably have more of a pattern, is what I was trying to say.
Well, I'm sure, I don't know the FAA rules, as soon as they take off, they bank hard.
Right.
I live straight south of that strip, and it's like, you look up and there they are. So I don't know what kind of rules they have, if there's even any to follow. But it's this, you know,
It's changed.
it's changed. And it's, I don't know, I don't know if there's any kind of issues anybody else has. I know they do. I know other neighbors do. So I guess I showed up at their own meeting.
So where would that go?
What's that?
This issue?
Is that something
Town
that's,
council.
does that have to be rezoned since it changed ownership?
Well, so
Well-
that airport was disused for about 18 months. So there is a part of the UDO that says if you stop using a property, you lose your grandfathered use. And I know for a fact that was farmed for hay last year, so it wasn't used. It was vacant.
Was an airstrip.
The airstrip wasn't being used, it was growing up, so.
It's
As far as a
not-
grandfathered use, I think that's a little shaky.
Is that identified as an airport slash airstrip with the state of Indiana?
Yeah, it's
FAA?
a report strip.
It's a private airstrip, but it's not
It's not,
regulated in any fashion. It's zoned A2.
anyway,
But-
yeah.
Yeah, and of course, I live close by, and all hours of the day, they like to fly about, they like to kick the corn with their feet over everybody else's property.
And like I said, it's like a circus.
Well,
Yeah, I mean,
that's not good, so I.
no, next time you're
Well,
flying, drive out there. 'cause
I think
it's-
we need to understand airspace.
Well, so
And-
I can make a couple comments because they're very annoying. So the grandfathered use in the UDO says you're, for one thing, it was discontinued, so that's questionable. The second thing is, it says you're not, if you do get a grandfathered use, you're not allowed to increase the intensity or the, and so going from the owner flying his plane to the owner letting him and 30 of his buddies fly their planes is an issue. So that's the first issue. The second issue is if you go to the guy's website, he's got a business he's running out of there. He's advertising stuff for sale, and in the newspaper article, he said he has employees working there. So
So it's an open business. now.
it's a business, whether or not you want to call it that.
Uh,
There has to be safety regulations.
And-
even on private
and-
air.
Just
Yes,
public-
14 CFR Part 103 is ultralight regulations. And you're not allowed to fly ultralights over congested areas. So,
With the LEDs,
yeah, with
yeah.
the powered parachutes are ultralights and they're not allowed to be flown over congested areas. So that's not related to the property. That's whoever's flying. But I don't know.
Hannah or Marissa, we had any other complaints or from out there?
Yeah, Rusty and I have been, trying to work on
Obviously, they're aware.
Okay,
I would encourage you to come to the council meeting, which is next Thursday, next tomorrow, fall break. Yeah, it's fall break.
Yeah.
The council meeting,
No, it's still
No, it's
happening.
still on.
It's our final budget. hearing. We'll be here.
The
next,
town,
next Thursday, the council meeting will be
the town
Yeah.
council.
here, town council.
okay, well, thank you. I won't be, I'm not available to come next week.
But if you get a
No, that's-
representative from the neighborhood, it's hard for him, because he's on board, he lives there, but
Right,
it's conflict. of
well, I
interest,
think Aunt Anna will be here. Like I said, when the biplanes are
but
there,
It sounds like things have changed dramatically.
yes.
Things have changed dramatically, that something needs to be updated.
They were flying. I got a video of them last night.
Yeah.
Out flying.
Appreciate you bringing that to our
All
attention.
right, well, thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah, they were low.
Later, too.
Yeah, they were low.
All right, I have one last amendment for you for the comp plan. Stephanie, would you mind pulling up that Word document? So according to the impact fee ordinance and Indiana code, we need to include some language in our comp plan that basically just states we have a impact fee plan. So that language is refer to the 2021 road impact fee zone improvement plan for the jurisdiction of the zone improvement plan. Is that all it takes?
Yes.
That's all I
Mr.
need.
Grant, you like that wording?
I love that word.
Thank you.
You would charge us for that,
Oh, a lot. I mean, that's like 3 hours.
that'd be a minimum rate.
I wrote that.
Yes, but I had to review it carefully.
We need to vote on this.
Yes,
I'll entertain a motion and a second to accept the comp plan, master plan language to include planning jurisdiction for road impact fees as stated in this additional letter.
I'll make a motion that we accept the comprehensive master plan modifications for the impact fees.
Do I have a second? Motion second. All those in favor, as ordinance is stated, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you.
okay, that's all I've got. Thought it was gonna be a short one, folks, sorry.
Meeting adjourned.